On the ground. On the ground. Get on the ground. On the ground. On the ground.
Well, now to the conviction in a deadly double shooting that shocked residents in Olney.
News is that Josh arrives with an individual who's later identified as Sabir Bunch. The two of them arrive in Josh's black Cadillac Escalade. Sabir Bunch gets out of the front passenger seat. He's armed with a firearm, which he then tries to conceal either behind his, at certain points behind his back, underneath his shirt. Josh appears completely unaware. At some point later, the second victim, Paris Gary, arrives on a motorcycle, both of whom he was friends with. Paris Gary he had been friends with for like over 20 years.
The Philadelphia District Attorney's Office says it was a jailhouse phone call that helped unravel Sabir Bunch's alibi, leading to a guilty verdict. Prosecutors say the convicted murderer was overheard in an unrelated jailhouse call, saying it was self-defense when he shot Joshua Chisholm and Paris Gary inside a home in August of 2023.
And you don't see it, but you hear gunshots. And then you see Josh running out the front door, down the steps, across, I think it's 3rd Street, up Champlain, where he eventually collapses.
Now, the trio, who authorities say were all longtime friends, came across one another at Albert Einstein Hospital earlier in the day. They left and went back to this house. Surveillance video shows Bunch concealing a weapon before he shot them both inside. One of them managed to run out of the house with several gunshot wounds. Authorities say they still have no motive.
A wrist or a hand reach out with a medical bracelet on it and pulls the door closed. About 2 minutes later, you see from the rear of the property, Sabir Bunch comes out of the house. He's hopping over fences, the next door fence, where he then runs into like a common alley, and we lose him. They come to the front of the house. They see Sabir Bunch outside of the house, hiding behind some bushes on the step.
On the ground. On the ground. On the ground. Get on the ground. On the ground. On the ground.
On December 23rd, 2025, Sabir Bunch was convicted of a double homicide that happened on August 3rd, 2023 in the Olney section of Philadelphia. For the 3 men involved, that day started as a normal day in the life. Paris Gary, or Petey, was at Albert Einstein Hospital as Sabir Bunch was being released. CCTV footage captures the pair together, followed by Joshua Chisholm picking Sabir Bunch up and bringing him back to Sabir's home from the hospital. Even though a lot of what followed was captured on home surveillance cameras, the actual shooting was not. By the end of the trial, this case still had some unanswered questions. Questions like what actually happened inside that house, mainly what sparked the incident that left 2 men dead. Although it was only a short 3 years ago, the world looked completely different in 2023. The news cycle was angered by major political shifts. On August 3rd, 2023, in particular, President Donald Trump made an appearance in federal court and pleaded not guilty for having attempted to overturn the results of the election through a plot in which pro-Trump slates of fake electors would be created. Overseas, tensions flared in West Africa as the U.S. Embassy in Niger began partial evacuations following a military coup. August 3rd, 2023 was a month before the October 7th attacks on the Jewish country of Israel that would change the world forever. Back in Philly on August 3rd, 2023, the day started with a relatively minor oil spill along the Delaware River, a more and more common occurrence these days. This was the second spill along the Delaware River that year, following the one in March. 2021, as I'm sure many of you know, Philadelphia hit the record for murders in a year. 2022 saw a similar trend, and 2023 saw those numbers slightly decrease, and the homicide number has gone down every year since. Sabir Bunch from 18th and Tioga was feared by some on the street because of his volatility. He was described to me as a loose cannon. Some say he was missing a screw or two upstairs. He now sits at SCI Mahoney with only hopes of appealing his sentence if he is to ever see the light of day as a free man. Sabir was born November 15, 1998 in Philadelphia. As I said earlier, he's from North Philly, 18th and Erie. His juvenile records aren't available, but he started getting arrested as an adult immediately. 12 days after his 18th birthday in November of 2014, he was arrested for robbery and did about a year before being paroled, and he's been on probation ever since. He was in and out of jail his entire adult life. Gun possession here, probation violation there. In 2018, Sabir was once again arrested on gun possession, and even though he was on probation, he beat the gun charge. It's unclear to me right now what happened with that case because, as it states in this article, his court records are no longer available. This small excerpt from the article talks about Sabir being one of 17 instances in which someone charged with a gun case in 2018 was later charged with homicide, murder, or attempted murder. And this article is from way back in 2021. Detractors of Larry Krasner point to cases like this as their biggest problem with what they call his soft on crime approach. Krasner will argue that he has a smart on crime approach. Like every police department and district attorney's office in the country, Philly saw a big spike in all violent crimes during COVID. Also, like most places, Philly saw a dramatic drop post-COVID despite the criticisms of Krasner and his policies. However, to Krasner's critics, Sabir's 2023 double murder case is particularly egregious because not only was he charged in 2019 for a murder, which a witness and camera says he participated in, but he somehow beat that as well. In a legal motion I obtained, it talks about how on December 2nd, 2019, at around 6 p.m. near 17th and Pulaski, paramedics transported Sean Gunther to Temple University Hospital, where he was pronounced dead by 7:30 p.m. At the scene, recovered were 6 .40 caliber fired shell casings and 4 .380 caliber shells, indicating the presence of at least 2 shooters. Although the shooting was off camera, surveillance video captured Sabir Bunch walking toward the scene, wearing a dark colored jacket, dark pants, and dark boots, while Marquise Williams was recorded wearing a red, white, and blue jacket with a dark hoodie underneath and dark striped sweatpants. An individual outside an unmarked windowless barbershop featuring a black door at 17th and Pulaski told detectives that Sean Gunther had just left after getting a haircut when the shots erupted. The investigation relied heavily on witness number 1, who heard the shots near 3700 Pulaski and identified Sabir Bunch firing a weapon. And then witness number 2, who says he saw Bunch and Williams fleeing south on Pulaski before turning east on Erie Avenue. Witness number 2 here became very important because he noted that Marquise Williams dropped his gun while running. He also noted that he saw him run past him, drop his gun, run back past him to get it, and then run back past him again. Video surveillance corroborated the timeline, capturing Sabir Bunch wearing the clothes described earlier, as well as Marquise Williams initially in the red, white, and blue jacket over the dark hoodie, which he then changed. They were never seen together on camera before the shooting. Footage shows Sabir arriving at the crime scene minutes before Marquise. Marquise is seen on camera walking from his car at Erie and Bouvier to the barbershop and back to his car before the shooting. Almost immediately after Sabir got to the barbershop, footage shows Marquise entering his silver or gray car, which was parked at 3700 North Bouvier Street, which was at 543, before changing his clothes and walking a path along Butler Street and Pulaski Avenue back to the place where they were calling a barbershop, before returning to the vehicle to swap his jacket for a dark-colored one at 548. Just minutes before the murder, he then walked back to the barbershop. Shots rang out seconds later. Immediately after the shooting, 2 men matching the descriptions were seen hurriedly fleeing east on Erie Avenue, south on 15th, east on Lenox, and then south across Broad Street from west to east. And finally, they went west on Venango. Search warrants for T-Mobile cell tower data confirm that the phones belonged to both Williams and Bunch and were seen at the crime scene together during the murder. Following the investigation, homicide detectives obtained arrest warrants. Williams was arrested that same day and charged with murder, criminal conspiracy, and related firearms offenses, while Bunch was arrested 5 days later on July 29, 2020. The 2 men's cases, which of course were connected at first, were separated by Judge James DeLeon when a witness failed to appear. When both witnesses failed to appear for the second time on November 18th, Judge DeLeon held Sabir Bunch for court but discharged Williams for lack of evidence. The Commonwealth refiled charges against Williams on December 19th, and he was held for court on all charges on March 17, 2021. Because they were held for court on different dates, the cases were separated. If you like this type of content and want to see more of it, make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and even share the vid with your folks. Don't forget to turn on notifications. It helps the channel more than you know. Sabir Bunch's 2020 murder case went before Judge Diana Anhalt on October 27, 2021 for a possible plea, but negotiations failed. Both cases were eventually scheduled for separate trials on January 30th, 2023. Williams' defense counsel sought to sever the trials, arguing that admitting Bunch's phone conversation with the witness would violate Williams' Sixth Amendment right under the Breton Rule. Prosecution says that witness number 2 first talked to them at the crime scene. When asked to come in and make a formal statement, witness number 2 at first declined. Witness number 2 would eventually come in to make a statement to police. He, however, failed to ever show up at trial. During the course of the investigation, he told police that Sabir Bunch had called him and asked him if he told someone named Boom from the neighborhood about the murder. Bunch's case went before Judge Diana Anhalt on October 27, 2021 for a possible plea, but negotiations failed. Both cases were eventually scheduled for separate trials on January 30th, 2023. Williams' defense counsel sought to sever the trials, arguing that admitting Bunch's phone conversation with the witness would violate Williams' Sixth Amendment right under the Breton Rule. The Commonwealth argued that the conversation was a direct attempt to silence a key witness and was therefore admissible under the co-conspirator exception to the hearsay rule. The prosecution argued that any constitutional concerns could be remedied during a joint trial by simply redacting Williams' name from the statements and replacing it with a neutral term like the other guy. Marquise Williams pleaded guilty to third-degree murder, while Sabir Bunch ended up walking away. Now, obviously, we wouldn't be here if Sabir Bunch was convicted in that trial. And since he never had a trial, it goes without saying there's no paperwork to tell me why. But I would have to guess it was because of the lack of evidence. The state would have had to prove that Sabir and Marquise both had guns and both fired shots. They can draw enough reasonable conclusions to prove that one of the two at least fired shots. However, the Commonwealth's problems were stacking up in this case. 1, the weapons were never recovered. 2, neither eyewitness showed up for court, even though they had one witness on audio and video record. 3, that witness ID'd both men, but could only positively ID one at the scene, Marquise Williams. Even though 2 sets of cartridges were found, any competent defense attorney could successfully argue that there are other possibilities of who fired those other shots. The 5th problem that the state had was that neither man was talking. I don't have enough information to know which shell casings Gunther was hit with, if not both of them. All the paperwork I could get talked about shells found at the scene and not the medical examiner's findings. Of course, this would all have come out at trial, but instead, Marquise Williams is doing 10 to 20 after pleading guilty. That would have put Sabir Bunch back on the street after his probation violation was sorted out. It wasn't long until we got to August 3rd, 2023. Video footage shows Sabir Bunch in the hospital along with longtime friend Paris Gary. Joshua Chisholm drove to Albert Einstein Medical Center and brought Bunch back from the hospital to his crib on the 5900 block of North 3rd Street, joined shortly after by Paris Gary. At the house, video shows Sabir Bunch exiting Joshua Chisholm's car, armed with a gun, which he is attempting to hide. Not very well, if I might add. Shortly after both enter the house, video footage shows Paris Gary pulling up to the home on a motorcycle. Around 7:30 p.m., the sound of gunshots could be heard. Joshua Chisholm runs out of the house and collapses on the ground across the street. Video later captures Sabir exiting the back of the house, hopping over fences, and fleeing from the area. About an hour and a half later, police responded to a call for a burglary at 428 West Spencer Street, which was about 2 blocks away. The complainant told PPD that a man kicked in the back door of her property and then fled out the front door. Officers located Bunch shirtless and hiding behind bushes outside of the property. Bunch's clothing was recovered and later tested positive for gunshot residue, along with other relevant evidence. At trial, Sabir tried to say it wasn't him on video and that he was not at his own home that night, a defense that was wildly silly. As you saw with Marquise Williams earlier, if a witness or camera sees you with a gun minutes before or after the killing, like the witness saw Marquise with earlier and like the camera saw Sabir with here, that would sway 90% of juries. In the Sean Gunther case, the witness saw Marquise Williams drop and pick up the gun. In the Josh and Paris murders, cameras catch Sabir with the gun. But the media says that prosecutors told them that it was a jail call that helped unravel Sabir Bunch's alibi, leading to a guilty verdict. Sabir was overheard on an unrelated jail call saying it was self-defense when he shot Joshua Chisholm and Paris P.D. Gary in 2023. The families of Paris Gary and Joshua Chisholm have been left fractured and heartbroken. A mother having to bury her son once again, and black mothers in this country feel that pain disproportionately. He was the life of the party, Paris's mom Denise explained, recalling his humor and love for karaoke, especially Tevin Campbell's Can We Talk. He could sing old school R&B for hours, she said, making it now difficult for her to attend family gatherings.
Paris was my go-to. When I need something, he was there. Like if my car break down, son, I broke down, Mom, where you at? If I need something put together, son, I need this, where you at? He wasn't a perfect kid. He wasn't a perfect kid, but his goodness will always outweigh his bad. I prepared myself for my son's murder. But once he got his life together, I let my guard down. Oh, he fine, God got him. When they told me, and until now, it's disbelief. I know he's gone, but I don't believe that he's gone. It's hard. It's hard, but I try to keep his memory alive through this speaking on his life and with his kids. They give me him.
Josh's mom, Diana, described her son as a remarkable individual who was an exemplary father, son, brother, and friend. Sabir Bunch was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences plus a consecutive 19.5 to 39 years incarceration by Judge Roxanne Covington. Sabir sits in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania at SCI Mahoney, a state institution where he will spend the rest of his life, barring a successful appeal. I know, I got to upload more, but your patience with my medical issues and the general time it takes to make some of these videos has been priceless. The Northeast video is a movie for real. And the Young Bag Chasers indictment doc is also a movie for real. And like I always say, it's quality over quantity. Believe me when I tell you, we're about to have a great time for the rest of the year on this channel with the stuff I have planned. So stay tuned. I'm gonna leave it there for now. Thanks for watching American Confidential, and until next time, be safe.
Olney section of Philadelphia, around 4th and Champlain. Police receive a radio call for a shooting in that area. And when they arrive, they find one of the decedents, Joshua Chisholm, lying in the street at 4th and Champlain, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. At that point, they're directed up the block to the house on the corner, which is 5953 North 3rd, which is where Josh had lived. When they arrive, they find the second victim, Paris Gary, also suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. Josh's house was equipped with video, and what it shows is that Josh arrives with an individual who's later identified as Sabir Bunch. The two of them arrive in Josh's black Cadillac Escalade. Sabir Bunch gets out of the front passenger seat. He's armed with a firearm, which he then tries to conceal either behind his, at certain points behind his back, underneath his shirt. Josh appears completely unaware. At some point later, the second victim, Paris Gary, arrives on a motorcycle, both of whom he was friends with. Paris Gary he had been friends with for like over 20 years. At some point, did all 3 men go inside of the house, where they're in there for approximately 20 minutes. And then the next thing you hear, you don't see it, but you hear gunshots. And then you see Josh running out the front door, down the steps, across, I think it's 3rd Street, up Champlain, where he eventually collapses. And you see, at the time, a wrist or a hand reach out with a medical bracelet on it and pulls the door closed. About 2 minutes later, you see from the rear of the property, Sabir Bunch comes out of the house. He's hopping over fences, the next door fence, where he then runs into like a common alley, and we lose him. About an hour and a half or an hour later, police respond to a separate radio call at 400 West Spencer Street for a break-in. And as police are walking through the house to secure it, make it safe, they come to the front of the house. They see Sabir Bunch outside of the house, hiding behind some bushes on the step.
On the ground. On the ground. Get on the ground. On the ground. On the ground.
He's brought down to the homicide unit, where police were able to recover that shirt. They were able to take some DNA from him. Turns out when the results come back that not only does the defendant have gunshot residue, which is the gunpowder that comes from the back of the gun onto either your hands or some kind of surface or clothing. His DNA also was on numerous firearms within that house, including the murder weapon. This was a case, because of the forensics that was done, really narrowed down what the defense was going to be. Because his DNA was on the murder weapons, because he was seen pretty clearly on video, and because of the gunshot residue, it was pretty clear that Sabir Bunch not only possessed a firearm illegally, that he discharged the firearm or was in close proximity. So that was helpful, very instrumental for me, because this wasn't going to be a matter of what happened,